Hey guys, tonight we're going back to a time when you didn't just wake up groggy and hit snooze. You woke to thunderous war drums, silk robes, and a palace full of people watching your every move. You're not just a ruler, you're a living god. Sort of. Welcome to the Han Dynasty Imperial Court, where your bed is gold, your breakfast is poison sometimes, and your job description is basically don't die, don't show emotion, and definitely don't sneeze during the morning rituals. It sounds glamorous until you realize the robes are itchy, the palace is freezing, and the only privacy you get is in your dreams, and even those aren't guaranteed. You probably won't survive this day, but you'll do it with dignity, incense, and a slightly annoyed expression. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where in the world you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before the sun, not because you want to, but because the drums demand it, not the soft tap of a polite gong. No, these are temple drums, big enough to make the stone under your bed tremble and loud enough to make your stomach clench before your eyes even open. They call you not to breakfast, not to joy, but to duty. You are not a man. Not exactly. You are the son of heaven, a breathing mandate, a symbol wrapped in skin. And today, like every day, you must be perfect by sunrise. The room around you is vast and cold, despite the 3 layers of silk blankets and the coals smoldering in braziers along the walls. The palace is made of stone and symbolism, not comfort. A eunuch, always there before you're awake, speaks your name softly, not out of affection, but out of protocol. You sit up, and instantly 2 others approach with robes. Not just any robes, ceremonial silk, embroidered with dragons you'll never meet and clouds you'll never touch. They slide them onto your body while keeping their eyes respectfully lowered. No one looks at the emperor, not directly. Not unless they want a problem. You're not alone. You're never alone. Even when you dream, you suspect there are ears listening. Privacy is not a concept that survives within the inner walls of the Han Imperial compound. Every movement, every sigh, every roll onto your side is recorded silently in the minds of your ever-watchful attendants. You once read about peasants who sleep on straw mats, curled into themselves beside cooking fires. It sounded barbaric and oddly comfortable as you rise to stand. The hem of your robe brushes the heated tiles. The stone is smooth beneath your feet, but it's a practiced smoothness, cleaned daily by someone who is not allowed to speak. Outside your chamber, the first breeze of dawn creeps in through latticed windows, tinged with incense smoke from somewhere deeper in the palace. You can already hear the faint murmur of life stirring. Somewhere, a servant is preparing tea you won't get to drink until late morning. Somewhere else, someone is plotting something that will eventually land on your scroll table. They call you divine, but no one asks if you're happy. You wouldn't know how to answer. Happiness is not expected of gods. The robe tightens around your chest as the belt is tied, snug but not oppressive. It's a reminder you are bound to this role, tailored into symbolism. Your morning begins not with a yawn but with posture, a perfect angle of the shoulders, a ceremonial breath. You are not supposed to slump. You are not supposed to show fatigue. You are supposed to float, like clouds embroidered across your back. You are guided, not escorted, not walked, but gently steered through the halls of jade and bronze. The floor has been polished so precisely that your reflection flickers in it, ghost-like and elongated, as if your soul is trying to walk ahead of you. The scent of frankincense thickens with each turn, and the ceiling begins to rise, arching upward in silent grandeur. The palace breathes with you, but not for you. Each corridor feels more symbolic than functional, lined with dragon carvings and lanterns that burn oil, distilled from sesame and old expectations. And yet you walk forward, a solitary figure in a robe worth more than a village, toward the place where everyone expects you to act, like you were born for this. Just ahead, through the final set of carved doors, awaits the first ritual of the day. You feel it before you see it. The air shifts, the temperature dips slightly, and somewhere beyond the paper screens, dozens of eyes are waiting to bow. But for now, it is only you. You take one breath, steady and quiet. As the ceremonial doors begin to open, your day of divinity has begun, and it hasn't even gotten difficult yet. You step through the carved wooden doors into a world where time slows, breath hardens, and every movement carries the weight of centuries. The Hall of Heavenly Clarity is not a place you walk into. It is a place that absorbs you. The ceiling soars with lacquered dragons, their eyes fixed on you like celestial auditors. Candles flicker along the corridor, though the sun has barely risen. You're supposed to feel illuminated. You mostly feel watched. The scent of incense hits you in waves, sweet, earthy, and thick enough to chew 5 braziers, each aligned with a celestial direction, smolder at strategic intervals. You nod at them, not out of belief, but because to do otherwise would be unthinkable. You don't just pray to heaven. You perform the idea of praying. Every motion has been practiced, codified, and reviewed by at least 6 ministers of rites before they allowed you to do it in public. Your knees press onto a silk cushion in front of the ancestral altar. It looks soft but feels like kneeling on philosophy itself. Stiff, heavy, packed with the invisible judgment of dead emperors. You inhale deeply and raise your hands in the practiced, rigid gesture of reverence. The high priest begins the chant, and you follow, not in unison, but half a beat after, as tradition dictates. You are not leading the prayers. You are merely the vessel through which the divine mandate is confirmed. 48 advisors line the outer walls, each in identical crimson robes, each holding identical scrolls. You are expected to glance at every single one during the ceremony, not too quickly, not too slowly, and offer a small nod of imperial recognition. Not a bow, not a smile, just a nod. Historians still argue whether this protocol was created to reinforce authority or to weed out weakness by forcing emperors to remain perfectly alert while fasting and kneeling. Your legs begin to ache precisely 20 minutes in. You have 120 more to go. The incense curls upward like question marks, filling your sinuses with resignation. The priest continues, now invoking the blessings of the stars, each name more obscure than the last. You pretend to follow. You always pretend to follow. At one point, the mention of a comet gives you pause. You remember the astrologer's scroll from yesterday? The one that hinted at a disturbance near the tail of the serpent star. You dismissed it at the time. But now, under all these eyes and all this smoke, it feels like the heavens are staging a subtle protest. A bell rings, soft, melodic, yet final. You stand, but only halfway. Time for the incense inspection. This sounds ceremonial, and it is, but it's also weirdly forensic. 2 ritual officials approach, holding lacquered trays with 6 sticks of incense each. You must inspect the angle of the burn, the curvature of the ash, and whether the scent has pleased the heavens. There is no rubric, just centuries of not making the wrong face at the wrong incense. 1 stick has cracked halfway down. You pause, but don't frown. Cracking is bad, or possibly a sign of change. You glance at the high priest, who gives you the blank look of someone whose actual opinion could cost him his tongue. You nod gently. A low murmur of satisfaction passes through the room. You passed. What? Exactly. You passed is unclear. Then come the oracles. 2 blindfolded diviners shuffle forward with scrolls wrapped in red silk. They kneel and unroll them before you. One contains a poem written in fractured Han script, supposedly dictated in trance. The other is a diagram of a tortoiseshell's burn pattern, mapped to seasonal outcomes. You squint at them, trying to look wise. You wonder if anyone in the room actually understands them. Probably not. That's the point. You give the prescribed response. Heaven's wind finds the river. It means nothing. Or everything. Depends who's listening. Next is the fire blessing. A court musician plucks 3 notes on a guqin, and a dancer in white performs a slow, twirling movement with a torch. It's beautiful in a sad way. Like a forgotten ceremony pretending not to be lonely, the fire is held close to a tablet bearing your father's name, and the flames flicker as if trying to whisper secrets, and then, finally, the nodding begins. This is your least favorite part. One by one, each of the 48 advisors steps forward in silence, holds out their scroll, and bows. You do not read the scrolls. You are not expected to. You simply look into their eyes and nod. A fraction of a second too long, and they'll think you favor them. Too short, and they'll think you're displeased. They will spend weeks analyzing the nod you give today. Historians might debate your decisions, but your ministers will interpret your micro-expressions like Holy Scripture. By number 13, your neck aches. By number 24, you forget what nod you gave to number 8. By number 35, You begin to wonder what would happen if you sneezed. The 48th advisor is your uncle. He holds your gaze half a second longer than is proper. His bow is slightly lower than required. He says nothing, but the tilt of his head carries history, ambition, and the faintest glimmer of challenge. You nod, slightly, neutrally, professionally. He smiles, the kind of smile that would get a farmer executed for insolence, but in court is simply noted. The final bell rings. The priest declares, "The will of heaven has passed through the sun." You rise, trying not to wince at your legs, which feel like they've been stuffed with wet rice paper. The incense is dying out, leaving behind a ghost of its former self. The advisors file out in silence. You remain standing as the dancers retreat. The officials bow, and the diviners are led away. Your stomach growls, loudly. One eunuch pretends not to hear it. Another offers you a pearl-inlaid hand towel, though you haven't broken a sweat. It's a gesture, not a necessity. 4 hours. 4 hours, and you've said nothing real, made no decisions, and offered no thoughts that weren't scripted 6 dynasties ago. And yet, somehow, the entire empire believes you've just communed with heaven. You turn to leave the hall, back straight, eyes forward. Breakfast awaits, assuming, of course, it isn't poisoned. You do not walk to breakfast. You are guided there, accompanied by the soft shuffle of slippers on stone and the ever-present squeak of the lacquered food cart rolling several steps behind you. The eunuchs move in absolute silence, except for the quiet hum one of them murmurs through his nose. He says it's for balance, though it sounds more like someone trying not to scream. The breakfast hall is no cozier than the ancestral shrine, just warmer, thanks to the brazier near the far wall and the faint steam rising from covered porcelain dishes. The chamber is cavernous, the table absurdly long. You sit alone at the head of it, as always. Even your most trusted consorts are forbidden from dining with you unless it is a state occasion. And breakfast, apparently, is not important enough to warrant company. Before you can lift a chopstick, your Xian, the official food taster, appears from the shadows like a nervous ghost. He is gaunt, always gaunt, and his robes hang off him like regret. His entire job is to eat before you do, so if anyone tries to kill you, he dies first. This is not metaphorical. Today's meal looks modest by imperial standards, which is to say, fit for about 30 people. 6 dishes, 3 soups, 4 dipping sauces, and a porcelain vessel of warm chrysanthemum tea, infused with a ginseng root that looks suspiciously like a shriveled human finger. The food taster kneels. He picks up a crab dumpling with gold-tipped chopsticks and takes a bite with reverent caution. Then he chews, slowly, thoughtfully, like someone trying to calculate the meaning of life through texture. A few beats later, he swallows. Everyone in the room holds their breath. You don't even realize you're doing it. He exhales, nods, lives. The next dish, stir-fried bamboo shoots with pine nuts. He samples, pauses, blinks twice. An involuntary tiff, not a signal. He swallows again. Still alive. Next, bird's nest soup, a delicacy made from the hardened saliva of cave-dwelling swifts. It's gelatinous, oddly comforting, and costs more than an oxen caravan. You never liked it, but you're required to eat it on ceremonial days. Today counts. The taster lifts a spoonful, lets it slide past his lips, and waits. 1 beat. 2. A swallow. He doesn't convulse. You nod for the meal to begin. Now, your own utensils are brought to you. Polished jade, not wood. Gold is considered ostentatious at breakfast, except on festival days. And this isn't one, just a standard, exhausting, possibly fatal Thursday. You take a bite of the crab dumpling. It's excellent. Of course, the imperial chefs are the finest in the land, each one trained in different regional styles. From the peppered sauces of shu to the subtle broths of qi, you chew politely, slowly. The food is warm, but your stomach remains uncertain. After all, even the finest chefs have family, and sometimes family has grudges. As you eat, your gaze drifts to the far end of the room. Behind a silk screen, shadowy figures wait, not servants, observers, ministers in training, scribes, security officials. They are there to study how an emperor eats, which dishes he favors, which sauces he ignores, whether he wipes his mouth with silk or allows it to remain stained with soy. Every detail could be interpreted, copied, or weaponized. You dip a dumpling in vinegar. A murmur ripples through the observers. You suddenly regret the vinegar. Why did you do that? Was that in the manual? A eunuch leans over and whispers, "My lord has an excellent palate." It's meant to reassure. It doesn't help. Halfway through your second course, a servant enters with a fresh scroll. You do not open it. If it were urgent, it would have come sealed with red wax. This is likely a reminder about a concubine's birthday or the irrigation situation in Liang province. You allow it to be set beside you, unopened. You are trying to chew. The chrysanthemum tea arrives in a new vessel, this one shaped like a lotus blossom. A small detail, but symbolic. The lotus rises unstained from the mud, purity, rebirth, etc. You wonder who approved the design. Someone is always approving something you'll never see. You take a sip. The tea is floral, slightly bitter, and far too hot. But you don't flinch. Flinching is weakness. Flinching suggests fear. You once flinched at a sour plum and spent the next month reading scrolls about imperial temperament and the responsibility of appetite. You learn quickly. You look down the table. A whole roast quail stares back at you with empty, glazed eyes. You do not feel powerful. You feel like the quail, stuffed, served, and waiting to be dissected. Would the Son of Heaven prefer candied ginger? A voice asks softly behind you. It's rhetorical. Of course you would. You always do. But they must ask. You nod once. The correct number of degrees. The ginger arrives, thinly sliced, curled like flower petals, and arranged on a dish painted with tiny turtles, symbols of longevity. You nibble one, sweet, sharp, cleansing, the only part of the meal that doesn't feel ceremonial. You glance at the food taster again. He is still kneeling, still alive. You wonder how many meals he's endured like this, mouthful by mouthful, waiting to die so you don't. Has anyone ever thanked him? Have you? You're not sure. It may be forbidden. A fringe anecdote comes to mind. One of the rare tidbits your tutor let slip between Confucian classics. During the early Han, a food taster once saved the emperor's life by vomiting mid-meal. The emperor rewarded him with a silk robe and early retirement. The robe was stolen within a week. He died penniless. That's how gratitude works in court. You're finishing your meal now. 3 bites left. You do not feel full. You feel performed. Your body has received calories, but your spirit feels like it's been chewed instead. A eunuch clears the plates without a sound. The tea is refreshed, though you won't drink it. The food taster bows again and disappears behind a screen, where he will rinse his mouth with salt water and recite his post-meal affirmation. I have served. I have lived. I will serve again. You sit still for a few more minutes. It is required. An emperor who rises too quickly is seen as impatient. An emperor who stays too long risks indulgence. You count to 60. Then again, finally, you stand. Everyone in the room exhales, some inwardly, some audibly. And then, as you begin walking toward the imperial study, another thought flashes across your mind, sharp and cynical. Tomorrow, the dumplings might be different. The poison might be subtler. The man kneeling might hesitate, but that's tomorrow. For today, you leave the breakfast hall and enter what modern bureaucrats might call your morning inbox. It's not a metaphor. It's an actual pile, an architectural feature, practically made of tightly bound bamboo scrolls, stacked in tidy chaos atop red lacquered tables that stretch across 3 adjoining chambers. The smell of ink and aging bamboo hits you like a philosophical migraine. This is your daily dose of empire. A scribe bows low and recites the count in monotone, like someone reading a weather report that forecasts eternal storms. 124 official reports, 38 military notices, 17 sealed poetry submissions from governors, and 6 celestial advisories. You sigh. Quietly, imperially. The first scroll is unsealed and presented. You hold it. Let your fingers trace the ridges of the bamboo slats. It's heavier than it looks, not just in weight, but in consequence. This one's from the magistrate of G province, predictably verbose. The first 4 lines are elaborate greetings and veiled compliments about your recent edict on land reforms. Then it gets to the point, a grain tax shortfall, bandits on the Eastern Canal, and a strong hint that perhaps the emperor could send moral reinforcements, translation, money, and soldiers. You hand it to your left side secretary with a simple nod. He knows what to do. Stamp it, file it, and assign 3 more secretaries to pretend it never happened. The second scroll arrives. This one's from the governor of Liang. It opens with a poem, a bad one. Something about moonlight on rice stalks and the silent virtue of taxation. You raise an eyebrow. The governor's seal is intact. The calligraphy ornate, clearly ghostwritten by a scholar who wasn't paid enough to care. You flip to the final section. Hidden amid metaphors is a coded request for a temple grant. You'll allow it, not because it's a good idea, but because saying no will make him send more poetry. The third scroll is bound with red string. That means it's a military matter. You unwrap it slowly, deliberately. Inside, a report from a general stationed near the northern border. The phrase fortifications holding steady is repeated twice, which, in court speak, means they are not. You circle the phrase with your thumb. No ink, just pressure. The general will understand. Behind you, a eunuch begins reading out the celestial report. His voice is as flat as a drumhead, which is appropriate given the contents. Unusual movement detected in the northern stars. The dragon path appears disturbed. The twin foxes have flickered. You stop reading. Repeat that last part. The twin foxes have flickered. Your Majesty. You close your eyes. Not because you believe in it, not fully, but because everyone else does. The twin foxes are celestial bodies associated with balance and trickery. When they flicker, it means something, or rather, people act like it means something. And that's often worse than the thing itself. Last time the foxes flickered, a prince in the Western Territories declared himself the true son of heaven. It took a siege, 3 fires, and the strategic application of starvation to settle the matter. You do not enjoy repetition. Send word to the astrologers. You say quietly, I want full calculation, and not in verse. More scrolls arrive. One by one, each is opened, read, skimmed, or simply waved aside. Some are written on paper imported from the far west. Soft, expensive, too delicate for truth. Others are carved onto stiff, brittle bamboo in a provincial dialect that barely resembles Mandarin. Here's one from a fisherman's collective, requesting a pardon for unpaid net taxes due to spiritual interference from river ghosts. You admire the creativity, then assign it to the minister of superstitions. Here's another from a village elder asking to build a shrine to your great-grandfather. Flattering, but suspicious. You flag it for review. Shrines are sometimes code for gathering point for rebellion. You've learned this the hard way. Scroll after scroll, request after request. The empire hums, and you are its only tuning fork. A distortion in your mood can change the future of a village. A sneeze during a tax report could delay grain shipments by 2 seasons. And yet, so little of it feels real. The names blur together. Governor, this magistrate that everyone praises you, yet everyone wants something. The deeper you read, the more you realize ruling is a form of very slow drowning in compliments. At one point, a scroll from the Bureau of Works catches your eye. It's about bridges. Specifically, a bridge near Luoyang that collapsed under the weight of a wedding procession and 6 pigs. There were no deaths, miraculously, but the bridge had been painted red in honor of your birthday. You make a note to not mention that during court. Then there's a scroll sealed in black wax. Rare, serious. You open it and feel your breath shorten. A spy report? Brief, precise. Consort Jen has met twice with Minister Han under pretext of poetry discussions. Servants report laughter. That's enough to ruin 2 lives. Or 3. Depending how many people overheard. You set it aside. A scroll from your tutor arrives. He wants to know if you've completed your daily reflection essay. You have not. You never do. He continues to assign them. You suspect he enjoys watching you fail to comply with your own curriculum. Eventually, your eyes begin to blur. You blink and realize the table has rotated slightly. Your staff is switching shifts so seamlessly, you almost missed it. The stack of scrolls on the right is now on the left. The pile hasn't gotten smaller, just more cunning. A memory surfaces, one you don't revisit often. When you were 9, your father let you sit beside him during scroll readings. You asked, "Do you actually read all of these?" He smiled. Then he said, "No, but they read me." You didn't understand it then. You do now, because the scrolls aren't just information. They're performance. They're the eyes of your empire looking back at you, each one trying to predict your reaction, each one hoping to catch your favor, or avoid your wrath. You feel a headache blooming behind your left eye. That means it's almost time for your reflection hour, which is really just 30 minutes of staring into a garden while pretending you aren't overwhelmed. As the last scroll for this round is handed to you, bound in silver thread, marked with the symbol of the inner palace, you pause. This one isn't about taxes, or bridges, or grain. It's a formal request from one of your concubines. She wishes to compose a musical offering in your honor. You glance at the calligraphy. It's beautiful and utterly insincere. You approve it anyway, because sincerity has nothing to do with court life and everything to do with survival. You move from the scroll chamber into the inner audience hall, but it's not a change of pace. It's a change of mask. If the scrolls were the Empire whispering to you, this is the part where it stares, unblinking, polite, and full of malice wrapped in etiquette. They're already waiting. Ministers, generals, scholars, even one or two foreign envoys who've been lingering around the capital long enough to master the bow without understanding the empire it honors. They stand at measured intervals, arranged like ceremonial furniture, not too close, never too close. Power must be approached as if it's radioactive. You step onto the jade dais at the center of the hall. The ceiling looms high above like the inside of a temple, painted with dragons that curl toward a golden sunburst, your symbol. Technically, but it mostly feels like decoration. The air is stale, filtered through centuries of incense and carefully muted dissent. The moment you stop moving, they bow. Dozens of backs bend in near perfect unison, some slower than others. You watch carefully, not for disrespect, but for performance, because that's what this is. Not loyalty, not reverence. It's theater, and every one of them is trying to steal the show. The Minister of Rights rises first. His beard is exactly 1 fist length from his chest. Court regulation. His voice is calm, reverent. He congratulates you on yesterday's splendid decision regarding irrigation in the north, even though you remember doing no such thing. Likely, he's referring to a policy drafted by someone 2 steps beneath you, signed with your seal while you were trying to scratch a mosquito bite under your sleeve. Still, you nod, as if you recall every detail. To correct him would be to invite embarrassment. And embarrassment, in court, is more dangerous than treason. It spreads faster. Next, the Minister of War steps forward, a large man, voice like cracked wood. He bows, then praises your aura of composure under celestial unrest. This is code. He's referencing the astrologer's warning. He wants reassurance, maybe funding, possibly soldiers. But he says none of this aloud. That would be crude. You reply with 7 words. Heaven's patterns are deep and unshaken. The hall murmurs. The line will be quoted by noon, carved onto monuments by dusk. A eunuch whispers the next name. Minister Han. You steel your face. Minister Han bows lower than necessary. He is sharp, silver-tongued, beloved by the bureaucracy and distrusted by the military. The combination makes him dangerous. His robe is embroidered with plum blossoms, a personal touch. Technically a breach of decorum. Nobody says anything. Your Majesty, he says, the people of Qi province sing of your wisdom. Even the children speak your name like spring rain. You resist the urge to blink. Qi province had a grain riot last week. Han's compliment is not a report. It's a test. If you accept the flattery, you ignore the unrest. If you challenge it, you admit instability. You smile, softly. Children often say what heaven hides. You reply. Han bows again, eyes shimmering with polite admiration. The smile on his lips is humble, the kind of humility that grows like mold behind walls. He leaves a scroll on the lacquered pedestal before you. It contains nothing useful, likely a poem, possibly a coded message. You'll have it deciphered later. Next comes an envoy from the northern steppes. He bows with an awkward half bend, uncertain whether he's supposed to touch his forehead to the floor. You forgive the lapse, symbolically. You have no choice diplomatically. He brings word from his Khan, full of praise and a request for marriage. Your niece to his son. You nod with unreadable grace. Your niece will not be pleased. She prefers poetry and women. But empire comes before affection. As the court rotates through its ritualized reverence, a strange phenomenon occurs. You begin to feel invisible. Everyone sees you, but no one sees you. They see the seal, the robe, the roll, not the person encased within. Even their praise feels like insulation, as if they're wrapping you in layers of silk so thick, you'll stop breathing without realizing it. At one point, an old scholar shuffles forward, His knees crack as he bows. He praises your commitment to the classics and begs to present a new interpretation of the Book of Rites. You know this scholar. You remember him tutoring your cousin years ago? You recall him laughing. Today, he trembles. He fears being irrelevant more than being wrong. You grant the request. He smiles like a man given an extension on his life. A new group steps forward, advisors from the Ministry of Works. One carries a small model of a dam, carved from ivory and painted with ink. They say it will double rice yields. They also say it will cost the treasury more than the emperor's own mausoleum. You ask one question: what happens if the river floods? They stammer. They haven't calculated that. You nod. Send the model for further study. Which means, essentially, bury this until someone else dies. All the while, the praise continues. You are wise. You are generous. You are heaven's chosen. Even the floor seems to agree. The jade tiles beneath your feet reflect your image faintly, warped by age and polish, like the court's version of you, recognizable, yet subtly distorted. Historians still argue whether emperors of the Han Dynasty were truly revered or simply feared with prettier language. The answer depends on who's doing the bowing. One minister begins a sentence with, "As your majesty already foresaw." You stop listening. Whatever it is, you apparently predicted it. Amazing. You should have yourself fitted for an oracle's robe. A eunuch hands you a perfumed handkerchief. You dab your lips, not because they need it, but because the motion signals the emperor is finished listening. It's court shorthand, a behavioral punctuation mark. They bow again. You rise. The session is over. You walk out, robe swishing lightly, face composed. Behind you, the murmurs begin. They will spend the rest of the day dissecting your tone, your nods, your silences. They'll assign meaning to your momentary glance at the ceiling. Some will draft letters, others will write poems. A few will sharpen knives. Even your silence speaks more loudly than their declarations. You pass a mirror in the corridor, a real one, imported bronze from the western regions. For a moment, you catch your reflection. You look like an emperor, but you don't look like yourself. Whatever that was, it's buried somewhere beneath layers of flattery and ritual. It surfaces only in dream, and even then, only briefly. By the time you reach your private antechamber, your cheeks hurt from holding your expression still. You sit, alone, for a moment, and then a eunuch arrives with the next list of names. More meetings, more bows, more lies wrapped in politeness and painted with poetry. Even your shadow seems to flatter you, but you know better. It's watching you, waiting. You'd think, after hours of ritualized bowing and poetic deception, the worst of it would be over. But the real game is only just beginning, because court is not where people serve you. Court is where they move you. And every piece on this imperial board has its own agenda. Some are subtle, some are sharp, some smile while holding daggers made of compliments. You step into the imperial strategy chamber, an oval room with no window, high walls, and the faint scent of pine and calculation. The floor is a giant lacquered map, your empire rendered in ink and gold, a living model of all the provinces, rivers, and garrisons. It's meant to remind you of your power. More often, it reminds you of your distance. Seated around this map are your highest-ranking nobles and generals. Technically, they serve at your pleasure. Realistically, many of them have been here longer than you've been alive. The oldest among them, your great-uncle from the southern provinces, has the kind of face that looks like it's been carved into a mountain by wind and regret. He begins, "My lord." The border along the Yellow River remains unsettled. A commander with full imperial authority could... There it is. The pitch. He wants military command. Again, you keep your expression still, but your mind stirs. If you grant him control of that region, he becomes a king in all but name. If you deny him, he sulks, and sulking nobles have a habit of inviting barbarians over for tea. Your tutor once told you, never fear an ambitious man who speaks plainly. Fear the one who cloaks his dreams in service. By that measure, your great-uncle is practically transparent. He says imperial stability, but he means let me carve a little empire for myself. You offer a non-committal smile and turn to the next petition. This one comes with music. Literally, your empress's brother, Lord Wen, has recently begun patronizing a traveling opera troupe, allegedly for cultural refinement. You'd believe him, if not for the sudden appearance of coded lyrics in their latest performance. A eunuch intercepted a libretto with odd phrasing. Metaphors about falcons unchained and jade crowns passed too early. It doesn't take a genius to decode. He's angling for regency, or worse, he's preparing the court for a shift in succession. You sip your tea, not because you're thirsty, because you need 3 seconds to think. Historically, the brothers of empresses are a problem. They don't hold power directly, so they meddle in art, finance, religion, anywhere influence can seep through cracks. Historians still argue whether Empress Lu's family guided the Han throne or simply gnawed at its base until it collapsed. You're beginning to understand why Wen smiles. It's the kind of smile that invites applause and assassination in equal measure. You make a mental note: the opera troupe must be disbanded. Quietly, you'll assign them a new patron in a far-off province, somewhere humid, with tigers. The next few hours are filled with debate disguised as courtesy, land grants, grain logistics, a suspiciously timed request for tax relief from a family connected to Minister Han. Every proposal comes with a gift, a compliment, or a clever turn of phrase. Every gift carries a price. Every compliment is a test. And then, of course, there are the eunuchs. They do not sit at the table. They do not speak unless spoken to. But they're here, watching, standing in precise formations along the walls, each one positioned like a chess piece waiting for the board to shift. They are the silent dynasty, the empire within the empire. You've learned never to underestimate them. Stripped of bloodlines and family names, they are bonded by information. Secrets are their inheritance. They control access to rooms, messages, meals, and occasionally, fates. One of them, Grand Chamberlain Ru, steps forward to whisper something in your ear. His voice is papery, soft, dry as old scrolls. Your Majesty, the seal requested for Lord Wen's funding proposal has delayed itself. He says it like the seal walked off on its own, like bureaucracy developed sentience and made a moral choice. You nod. Ru bows and retreats. He knows exactly what he's doing. That one line delays Wen's scheme by 3 days. Enough time for you to make adjustments, or make someone disappear. You sit back, observe the room, and it hits you. This is not governance. This is not leadership. This is an arena. The marble floors may be polished, but the blood is still here. It just stains and whispers now. You remember a lesson from the old Shiji, the records of the grand historian. An emperor must be both hawk and mirror, always hunting, always reflecting. You used to think that meant balance. Now you suspect it means paranoia with etiquette. Someone brings up the topic of the heir apparent. You feel a shift in the air. It's not loud. It's not visible, but it's there, subtle, like a thread being pulled through silk. You offer a neutral reply. He continues his studies. You add nothing more. Your son is 11, bright, thoughtful, slightly too fond of poetry. You haven't decided if that makes him sensitive or dangerous. You move on. Later, a courier arrives with a message from the outer provinces. It's wrapped in black silk. That means urgent, possibly violent. You don't open it yet. To open it in front of these people would be a sign of weakness, curiosity, or misplaced trust. You set it aside. A governor's envoy offers you a golden turtle figurine. Turtles symbolize long life. The figurine is hollow. You'll have it melted and inspected. Probably nothing. Possibly everything, even here. Amid velvet robes and fragrant tea, the daggers remain unsheathed. They just glitter more nicely. And you sit in the center, not the king, not the player. The board, you are the board they play on, and they'll keep moving. Your uncles, your in-laws, your eunuchs, until you forget that you, too, were once a piece. The meeting finally ends. Everyone bows again. Longer, deeper, just a shade more performative than necessary. This is how they mask exhaustion and scheming. You rise. Your knees crack, a reminder that even gods grow old. You exit the room with your entourage behind you. Not too close, not too far. As you pass through the stone corridor, a servant girl bows and averts her gaze. You recognize her, barely. She used to serve in your library. Quiet, sharp-eyed. She once corrected a historian's misquotation under her breath. You remember being impressed. You also remember she was reassigned 2 weeks later, to the laundry department. Too observant, too close, too dangerous. Your chambers await. For a moment, you can be alone, or alone-ish. Someone is always near, just out of sight. You breathe. Slowly, the palace feels quieter at this hour. Not peaceful, just quieter, like a chessboard at night. After the game, but before the pieces reset, tomorrow, your uncle will try again. Tomorrow, the opera will have a new song. Tomorrow, someone will move a pawn while calling it a prayer. But tonight, just for a moment, the board is still, and you, king, god, boy once taught to kneel before stars, you remain at the center, tired, and very, very awake. Midday, in theory, is for rest. In practice, it's for paperwork, divine paperwork. They call it memorizing heaven's will, which sounds majestic until you realize it mostly involves rubber stamping decisions you didn't make about places you've never seen for people you'll never meet. If heaven truly has a will, it expresses it in the most bureaucratic way possible. Scrolls, seals, and a never-ending stream of clerks whispering phrases like urgent, but not yet critical, or best reviewed before the mid-autumn audit. You're seated at your imperial desk, a slab of polished sandalwood carved with the 5 sacred beasts of harmony. It's beautiful. It's also tilted ever so slightly, which means every brushstroke you make requires subtle compensation. You once asked a carpenter to fix it. The carpenter vanished 3 days later. No one ever explained why. You've since learned to tilt your wrist instead. A eunuch unrolls the first edict of the afternoon. It's already been drafted. Your job is to approve, amend, or, rarely, reject. Today's topic: a tax adjustment for the salt merchants of Donglai. The scroll opens with the usual 4 lines of praise for your heavenly wisdom, which you skip. You've read more poems about your face than you've seen reflections of it. The proposal itself is sensible, too sensible, which makes you suspicious. Who benefits? Who loses? You murmur, approve with caution, a phrase that means nothing and everything. The eunuch records it. A second eunuch prepares the jade seal. The seal is heavy. Physically and symbolically, it bears the inscription, received from heaven, entrusted to rule the people. You press it onto the red ink pad, then down onto the parchment. The slap is satisfying, almost violent. It's the only part you control. Next scroll, a new standard for measuring grain in the southern provinces. The old standard was too generous. Apparently, the new one will shave a handful from every sack. Multiply that by a few million sacks, and suddenly someone is building a marble courtyard. You approve it, but you make a note in the margin, to be reviewed in autumn. Whether anyone will review it is another question entirely. Most likely, it will be interpreted as an expression of imperial awareness, which is exactly what you intended. This continues for hours. Decrees about bridge maintenance, grain redistribution, temple funding, legal reform. Every now and then, you come across a scroll that clearly contradicts another scroll you signed last week. You point this out once. The ministers respond with a 38-page commentary on interpretive harmony. You don't ask again. Between decisions, you sip herbal tea. Today's blend is chrysanthemum and wolfberry, allegedly good for the eyes. You're skeptical. Your left eye has been twitching for 3 days. The physician said it was a chi blockage. You suspect it's just chronic empire. Now and then, a breeze filters in from the western window. It smells faintly of pine and distant fires. You allow yourself to close your eyes for a moment. Just a moment. Your head droops. Your neck snaps back up. You're awake, still emperor, still behind on scrolls. A eunuch clears his throat. Politely, apologetically, the next batch has arrived. These ones come wrapped in blue silk. That means religious matters. You brace yourself. First scroll. A monk from Mount Tai requests permission to build a new hall of contemplation. He includes a drawing of the proposed structure, which looks suspiciously like a wine storage house with extra prayer flags. You deny the request. Politely. Second scroll. A Taoist priest claims to have found a star map that proves the Han line will rule for another 1,000 years. He requests a modest reward, perhaps a small estate and 4 wives. You approve the estate. Deny the wives. Third scroll. A Buddhist envoy from the western regions writes of a monk who meditated in a cave for 7 years without blinking. The scroll smells faintly of incense and something stranger. You file it under pending. It's too bizarre to approve, too poetic to reject. Your mind starts to wander. You remember being 12, standing in this very room, watching your father press his seal onto scroll after scroll. You asked him if he knew what they all said. He laughed, then said, "No, but heaven does." At the time, It sounded wise. Now it sounds like an excuse. The truth is, you can't know everything, and you're not supposed to. The machinery of empire is too large, too intricate. Your job is not to read it all. Your job is to give it meaning by pretending you do. Historians still argue whether emperors of the Han Dynasty truly governed or merely sanctified the governance of others. You suspect it depends on the emperor and the hour. Some scrolls carry more weight than others, like this one. A dispute between two border generals over the proper interpretation of a previous edict, your edict, regarding tribute grain. One claims the edict authorizes full seizure of grain during threat periods. The other insists it refers only to emergency harvest collection. Neither is wrong. Neither is right. You wrote the original in vague terms on purpose. You issue a new decree. Let the needs of the people guide the hand of the state. It means nothing. It will be interpreted as law. Another scroll, a recommendation for the post of regional tax assessor. The nominee is from a respected family. Too respected. His father served your grandfather. His uncle married into the palace. He's 32, with no real accomplishments and suspiciously poetic handwriting. You reject him. The room reacts. Silently, but it reacts. The rejection of a court favorite is like tossing a stone into still water. The ripples will find you later. In opera lyrics, in market rumors, in unusual delays of previously routine tasks. You glance at the pile, still mountainous, still growing. You allow yourself a moment of pettiness. You take a scroll from the bottom of the pile, completely random, just to disrupt the hierarchy. It's from a village in the northwest, requesting permission to host a local festival in honor of the harvest goddess. The tone is earnest, the handwriting clumsy. There's a drawing included, 2 stick figures with a smiling sun. You smile. Genuinely, for the first time all day, you approve it. No seal, no formality. Just a quick, handwritten line. May joy come with the grains. The eunuchs look surprised. You enjoy that. You glance at the sky outside. The sun has shifted. Shadows stretch across the map on your desk. You have 2 more hours before court resumes. Technically, this is your rest period. You should lie down, close your eyes, meditate on balance and duty. Instead, you reach for another scroll, because heaven's will doesn't memorize itself. You command a realm so vast, it would take half a lifetime to walk from one end to the other, and another half to understand it, which is ironic. Really, because while every inch of it bows to you, you've never stepped foot on most of its soil. You rule an empire you cannot visit. The maps laid across your palace walls tell you otherwise. Painted with delicate strokes of ink and gold leaf, they make the empire look manageable, comprehensible. Elegant rivers curve like calligraphy. Mountains stand like gray pyramids of dignity. The Great Wall slithers along the northern frontier like a stone dragon dozing in sunlight. Borders are drawn cleanly, cities marked with crimson dots. The names are embroidered into your memory. Chang'an, Luoyang, Shu, Nanyang, Jiaoji, Dunhuang. But maps are liars. Beautiful, compliant liars. Take the Northwest. For example, the Gobi Desert on parchment. It's a soft beige wash with dotted trade routes and a few confident camel illustrations. But the reality, as you've read in reports and in the terrified eyes of returning emissaries, is far more hostile. Wind-swept plains of cracked earth, dunes taller than temples, heat that crushes bones from the inside. Traders cross it with desperate reverence, tying talismans to their belts and hoping the gods like dry humor. Beyond the Gobi lies Dunhuang, a city of sand and ink, a remote outpost that somehow guards both the empire's edge and the gates to distant lands. You've approved funding for its Buddhist grottos, massive cave temples carved into cliffs, painted with murals of heavenly beings and glowing halos. You've never seen them. You've only heard that the colors look like they were stolen from dreams. Southward lies Yue, deep in the wetlands. There, rice paddies stretch for miles, emerald grids stitched into the skin of the land, dotted with water buffalo and workers who never glance up when the emperor's name is said aloud. It rains often, rains hard, the kind of rain that feels personal, the kind that makes ink run. You've signed policies for flood management in Yue at least 10 times this year. The locals, according to the reports, build floating houses out of bamboo. Some even raise ducks indoors. Historians still argue whether Yue was culturally aligned with Han norms, or subtly resisting them through local customs. You don't particularly care, so long as the taxes arrive on time. and the provincial governor stops writing in verse. The Southwest is a different story. Shu, the land of fog and poetry. Mountains rise like crumpled silk, wrapped in mists that hide entire cities for days. According to legend, Shu was once ruled by a king who could speak to cranes. His descendants now file quarterly reports on tea yields and the maintenance costs of palace gardens, a quiet region, by imperial standards. Too quiet. Perhaps you think often of Shu, not because it's rebellious, but because it sounds cool. Literally, your own palace bakes in dry northern summers and chills with icy winds come winter. But Shu, they say, always smells of moss and rain. If you were a lesser man, say, a poet, you might daydream of retiring there, but emperors don't retire. They fade, or they fall. The northern frontier is a constant test. The Xiongnu tribes press like wolves against your stone walls, sometimes trading, sometimes raiding. You've never seen them. You only know their names. Short, sharp syllables that sound like thunder across plains. Your generals speak of them with a mix of contempt and grudging admiration. Once, a captured Xiongnu warlord refused to kneel during an audience. Instead, he stared at your throne with eyes like flint and said, "You rule paper, I ride earth." It took 4 guards to drag him out. You never forgot it. You wonder if he was right. To the east, the sea, infinite, ungovernable. It gleams on your maps like polished glass, a place of mystery, monsters, and poorly drawn islands. Occasionally, a fisherman's tale reaches court, sightings of foreign sails, giant turtles, or floating temples. You approve the report, file it, and do nothing. The sea is both too far and too close. No one rules the sea, not even you. And then there's the capital, Chang'an, the only place you truly know. And even here, your knowledge is fragmented. Palace grounds, government halls, ancestral shrines, the occasional viewing platform overlooking the market where everything has been pre-scrubbed, pre-organized, pre-celebrated before your arrival. They call you the center of the world, and yet you've never walked its streets alone. You've never seen a puppet show unannounced, never bartered for chestnuts, never stood in line at a tea stall and asked the price without everyone falling to their knees. You know your city through reports and glimpses, the smell of grilled lamb drifting over palace walls, the laughter of students on exam day, the clatter of festival drums drifting through silk curtains. Once, in your youth, you tried to sneak out, wore a commoner's robe, slipped away during a festival. You made it as far as the outer gate before a eunuch caught you by the sleeve and whispered, "A star does not walk the street. It stays in the sky." You've never tried again. Instead, you've explored through scrolls and stories. You know the exact dimensions of canals in Nanyang. You've memorized the wind patterns in the Huai River Valley. You can quote the mineral content of iron mines in the Taihang Mountains, but you do not know how sunlight feels in any of these places. The empire is real, but to you, it's always a step removed. A map, a model, a reflection. You remember a proverb your mother once whispered during a storm? 1,000 li away. The emperor's eyes are blind. She said it gently, as a warning, not a rebuke. You understand it now. Even the fastest messengers take weeks to reach the furthest provinces. By then, the problem has changed. The people have adapted, the harvest has failed or flourished on its own terms. You react from a distance. You issue orders based on reports that are already out of date. And still, the empire calls you its heart. You sign decrees for people who will never see your face. They will curse you or praise you based on whether the water wheels work, the granaries hold, the governors behave. They will hang your portrait in temples. They will burn your name into rituals, but you will never stand in their fields. You will never taste their wind. You are a god of parchment and performance, a shadow painted in gold, and someday you envy the caravan guards more than the scholars, because at least the guards feel the road. A fringe report comes to mind, a strange one. A traveling monk once claimed he found a village so far south they didn't know your name. They bowed to the sun, not the dragon. He said they were happy, that they sang as they worked. The report was quietly filed away. You remember it because it made you angry, and then sad, and then quietly hopeful. There's a part of you that wants to visit, to leave the palace, just once, to walk in mud, to smell tea before it's been presented on silver trays, to sit in the shade of a tree that hasn't been blessed or cursed by symbolism. But you never will, because if you leave, you stop being the emperor. And if you stop being the emperor, what are you? Just a man. Tired, curious, bound in silk, staring at a map, dreaming of dirt. Afternoon court begins, not with a declaration, but with a hush. The sound of dozens of silk sleeves brushing against polished stone as your ministers and officials file into the hall of harmonious governance. It's a grand name. Everything here is grand. Grand names, grand robes, grand lies. But by now, you know better. Afternoon court is not where governance happens. It's where theater is performed. And every person who bows before you arrives with a mask stitched behind their eyes. You sit atop your dragon-carved throne, high-backed and ceremonial, the jade platform beneath your feet, cold despite the sun slanting in through the tall windows. The throne faces the court head-on, yet you feel strangely off-stage. Everyone's watching you, but no one expects you to speak much. Your job is to project stillness and divinity while they perform nervous monologues for a god that blinks. First up, General Rui. He's wide-shouldered, gravel-voiced, and always arrives in partial armor, despite it being both inappropriate and wildly uncomfortable indoors. He bows, deeply, then rises with perfect timing, a move practiced in front of bronze mirrors. No doubt. My emperor. He begins, his voice hoarse with the precise balance of emotion and restraint. We have lost 30 men along the Western Pass, ambushed, slaughtered. Their names, I bring before you. He unrolls a scroll, slowly, for effect. The names are real, the pain, possibly too, but there's more here than grief. He wants reinforcements. He wants resources. He wants to remind you that blood buys borders, and that he's the one spending it. You nod. Once. The correct number of degrees. Then glance at your Minister of War. That glance alone is its own decree. General Rui bows again, just slightly longer this time. The court takes note. Everything you do here is measured in invisible ink. Next comes a poet. Why? Because tragedy demands a chorus. He's thin, aging, and dressed in a robe so starched it could stand on its own. He bows with exaggerated humility, then rises with the faintest grin. Your Majesty, he says, in these uncertain times, I offer a humble verse. Of course he does. He recites lines about loyalty and loss, weaving Confucius into metaphors about wind-blown leaves and rivers that do not return. The performance is flawless, too flawless. The court listens. You pretend to, but what interests you isn't the poem. It's the precision. Each reference placed like a dagger under velvet. A line about the boat that leaks despite golden nails is almost certainly a jab at the Minister of Justice, who recently mishandled a bribery case. Another line about the jade cup passed too early raises eyebrows near the succession advisors. The poem ends. Applause would be undignified, but there's a subtle rustle of approval, a sigh, a shifting of sleeves, a calculated blink. You murmur, words well balanced. That's imperial code for I heard it. I am not amused, but I'm not punishing you yet. He bows again and retreats, robe swishing like the curtain of a one-man stage play. Then comes the real performance. A petition, a young official, new, nervous, with the waxy sheen of someone who's never failed publicly, approaches the dais. He stammers as he bows. His scroll shakes as he opens it. Your Majesty, I bring forth concerns from the families of the 4th Battalion. There where pensions have not. The Minister of Accounts interrupts with a cough, a warning cough, a territorial cough. The young official blanches. You tilt your head. Let him speak. You say, 5 words, and the room goes colder. He continues, voice smaller, but steadier. He names villages, names dates, cites failures in disbursement. You listen, actually listen, because buried in his nervousness is truth, uncomfortable truth, and truth, in this room, is an endangered species. You nod once more. Investigate. You say, the Minister of Accounts bows too deeply to be sincere. The young official bows too quickly to be safe. After he leaves, a low murmur rolls through the room, one part awe, one part warning. Somewhere behind a screen, you're certain a record keeper is noting the moment for posterity or revenge. A few moments later, a servant appears. He carries a tray. On it, a small bronze statue of a crane, its beak dipped in cinnabar. A gift from the provincial governor of Jiaoji. The message is obvious. Cranes symbolize longevity. The cinnabar, power. The implication, thinly veiled support for the current heir. You do not touch it. You nod. Someone else will decide whether it goes to the treasury or the fire. A performer steps forward. Yes, a literal one. An acrobat summoned under the guise of cultural preservation. He spins. He flips. He balances a tray on his foot and launches it into the hands of a eunuch with such precision, even the scribe raises an eyebrow. The court chuckles. You smile. And that, somehow, is the most dangerous moment of the day, because the smile is real. And realness in court is like bleeding in a shark tank. As the laughter dies down, another official steps forward, older, slower, robe folded perfectly, hands clasped, expression unreadable. You know him by reputation. Quiet, loyal, thorough, the kind who gets things done without leaving footprints. He offers no scroll, just a bow. And then there is a matter, Your Majesty, of security. Within the palace, the room tenses, you feel it behind your ribs. He names no names, offers no specifics, but the implication is clear. Something, or someone, is out of place. You offer a vague reply. The palace is vast, let it be cleaned. The phrase will ripple through the bureaucracy like a stone in still water. People will panic. Others will purge. Some will disappear. One or two will send gifts. And one will run. Historians still argue whether emperors actually use these moments to flesh out traitors, or simply to remind everyone that silence doesn't mean ignorance. Either way, it works. A eunuch arrives with a scented cloth and offers to dab your brow. You're not sweating. Not yet. But the gesture is symbolic. It says, the emperor notices everything, even sweat that hasn't formed. As court continues, you notice a pattern, too many smiles, too few disagreements. This is not harmony. This is fear, and fear, when left unchecked, curdles into rebellion. You interrupt a minister's speech on grain quotas with a single question. When was the last time you disagreed with me? He freezes. The room goes silent. You wait. He opens his mouth, closes it, opens it again. I strive always to align with your Majesty's superior wisdom. You nod, then dismiss him, not out of anger, but out of pity, because he's become useless. Truth only surfaces when someone dares to displease you. And here, in the afternoon sun, on this polished stage of rituals and robes, everyone wants to be your echo. You glance to your left. There, standing in shadow, is a servant, young, still, hands behind his back. His robe is too crisp, his eyes too still, and that's when it clicks. You recognize him. From the kitchens, from a week ago. He's not supposed to be here. You say nothing. For now, but your mind sharpens. Because behind one perfectly folded robe, there's always a hand, not holding a scroll, but hiding a blade, or poison, or a secret. Court ends, as it always does, with bows and silence. So much silence. You leave the hall as the sun begins its slow descent behind the palace walls. Its light turns gold, then amber, then crimson, the color of blood, of robes, of endings. Another performance complete, another trap narrowly avoided, and tomorrow, the play begins again. Evening approaches, and with it comes a different kind of bureaucracy, one that wears perfume instead of ink, speaks in coy glances instead of policy, and somehow manages to be even more politically volatile than grain tax reform. It's time to choose a concubine. Again, the Hall of Feminine Harmony, yes, that's really what it's called, is nestled deep within the inner palace. You don't walk there on your own. You're escorted, and not just by eunuchs, but by a protocol officer, 2 scribes, 3 ceremonial guards, and, oddly, someone from the Ministry of Rites, whose job seems to be silently judging your aura. The room smells of sandalwood, peach blossoms, and quiet desperation. You enter through a silk-draped archway and are greeted not by the women themselves, heaven forbid, but by a large lacquered board. It's covered with ivory plaques, each engraved with a name, a rank, and a series of numbers that look suspiciously like catalog codes. Welcome to the Imperial Harem. Population, roughly 9.
Doza.
Yes, 9.
Doza.
Each woman is meticulously documented, like rare calligraphy scrolls. They're organized by rank, beauty, favorability, birth family, previous appointments, and, rather grimly, fertility records. There's a rotation schedule managed by the Office of Palace Women, a unit so obsessed with logistics that they make military quartermasters look like street vendors. You don't choose based on desire. You choose based on mathematics, family alliances, political debts, and celestial charts. The stars, allegedly, have a lot to say about who you sleep with. Tonight, the official on duty presents you with 5 options, all pre-screened, all pre-approved, all wearing expressions of mild serenity wrapped around intense ambition. Shall we follow the standard order of rotation? Your Majesty, the eunuch asks, as if discussing tea preferences. You nod, because to do otherwise is to disrupt a hierarchy so delicate, it once sparked a fire in the orchid pavilion. A concubine was skipped. She responded with incense and flammable poetry. Long story. First in line is Lady Jen, 23, poised, the daughter of a minor noble family with major ambitions. She bows deeply, her silk sleeves folding like waves. She's clever, probably too clever. She once composed a poem so beautiful, your advisors debated for days whether she'd written it herself or hired a ghost scholar. You still don't know. Next is Lady Yun, younger, shy, a recent addition from the southern provinces. She hasn't spoken more than 12 words to you in the past 3 weeks. But her family controls significant rice shipments, and her silence is, frankly, a welcome change from everyone else in your life. Then there's Lady Lian. She's technically a favorite, elegant, lyrical voice, dangerous. She once advised you, mid-embrace, to watch the shadows near your brother's quarters. That shadow turned out to be a spy. She says little, but hears everything. 2 more follow. Names you forget, smiles you remember. You nod. They bow. A eunuch records it all in a leather-bound journal, as if your evening is a census. You are escorted to the Hall of Silken Rest, another name designed to sound soothing and fail completely. You don't go alone. The chosen concubine follows, along with 5 more eunuchs, 3 maids, and a physician whose job is to observe without observing. Privacy. Here is a fiction. Even intimacy is choreographed. You bathe, or rather, you're bathed. The water is warm, but the room is cold. You can't decide if that's a metaphor or just poor architecture. The concubine enters once you're dressed in sleep robes made of embroidered dragon silk. She bows. You exchange a few polite words, maybe a shared joke, maybe a reminder of her father's upcoming promotion. Depends on the evening. Historians still argue whether the Han emperors had meaningful relationships with their concubines or simply tolerated them for protocol. Evidence suggests both. There are letters, poems, even a few official records of genuine affection. There are also records of concubines being buried alive for violating ritual order. Balance. As always. You lie down. She lies beside you. The candles flicker, and nothing. You're tired. Genuinely, not as an excuse, as a physical, spiritual fact. The kind of tired that stretches through bone and dynasty. You remember being told, at age 13, that the vitality of the dragon must be renewed nightly. You didn't know what that meant. You nodded anyway. Later, you realized it was less about pleasure and more about producing heirs. You were expected to be a prolific seed spreader, a symbol of masculine order. But now you mostly feel like an ancient fertility statue, dressed in royal pajamas. Tonight, nothing happens. The concubine pretends not to mind. She smiles with the serenity of a priestess, bows again, and retires to her side of the room. You exhale. The eunuchs record it all. In the morning, her name will be marked. The bed sheets will be examined by servants with gloves and quiet judgment. Her standing will rise or fall based on how long she lingered near your wrist. There are thousands of them, all waiting, all rotating. Constellations of silk and ceremony, orbiting the cold star that is you. You used to be interested, then curious, then numb. Now, you're just obligated, because each visit, each selection, is more than personal. It's political, a favor to a governor, a balance against an ambitious family, a test of loyalty wrapped in perfume. There's a fringe tale you once overheard. During the reign of Emperor Yuan, a concubine faked pregnancy 3 times by stuffing fabric under her robes. She did it to avoid reassignment. No one discovered the truth until she retired, voluntarily, which is rare. When they confronted her, she just smiled and said, "You wouldn't have wanted my children anyway." You think about her often. The room grows quiet, the candles dim. You lie on your back, staring at the silk canopy above your bed, Dragons and phoenixes swirl in stitched clouds, a symbolic representation of harmony between heaven and earth. You've counted them before. 63 creatures, 9 clouds. One mistake in the embroidery you're never allowed to mention. Outside, crickets chirp. Wind rustles the garden leaves. For a moment, it almost feels like peace. But then you remember tomorrow's rotation schedule. Another 5 faces, another 5 names, another 5 sets of expectations folded into sleeves. You're the son of heaven, but even the sun sets, and when it does, it's expected to make love to the stars. You bathe like a god. Technically, there's a massive, dragon-carved tub waiting for you in the Hall of Purified Essence. Yes, that's its real name. It sounds peaceful, like a sanctuary of reflection and healing. But in truth, the imperial bath is less a spa and more a bureaucratic swimming pool, with ceremonial expectations and suspicious temperature control. The tub itself is something to behold. Hewn from a single slab of mountain stone, polished until its surface gleams like moonlight trapped in water. Coiling dragons wrap around the basin's edges, mouths open, spouting streams of tepid water that somehow manage to be neither cold nor warm, just disappointing. You step in slowly, not because it's hot, it isn't, but because the floor is always slightly slippery. At least one emperor is rumored to have broken a rib falling in. Historians still argue whether it was the bath, a clumsy eunuch, or divine retribution for raising salt taxes. The official record blames a sudden imbalance in qi. Naturally, you lower yourself in. The water laps around your waist, murky from a combination of mineral salts, medicinal herbs, and, if you're being honest, centuries of unspoken tradition. A few flower petals float near the surface, decorative, symbolic, possibly decoy flavoring for one of the less palatable elixirs your physician insists you consume later. Around you, at least 30 people stand silently, servants, eunuchs, attendants, bathing in solitude. It seems is strictly reserved for peasants and poets. Some hold towels, some hold jars of scented oil. One poor soul's entire job appears to be watching a single incense stick to ensure it burns at the correct pace. He looks like he hasn't blinked since the spring festival. You exhale and lean back. The ceiling above is painted with cranes in flight. They're peeling a little, not enough to be embarrassing, but enough to remind you that even luxury has an expiration date. A eunuch steps forward. He holds a ladle and a bowl of something labeled invigorating spirit broth. You've had it before. It tastes like wet pine cones and regret. He pours it gently over your shoulder while whispering a blessing that dates back to the Han founding. Something about cleansing the mortal weight of heaven's burden. You try not to shiver. The water is cold. The burden is not. This is supposed to be your moment of peace, but all you can think about is how loud water sounds when you're trying not to speak. One attendant hums softly as he pours warm water over your back. You appreciate the gesture. It's off script, likely forbidden, but oddly human. A simple kindness. You almost want to thank him, but you don't. That would violate protocol, and kindness, in court, tends to get people reassigned, or disappeared. The soap today is cedar and lotus root. It smells like ambition. You wash slowly, methodically, not because you're enjoying yourself, but because this is one of the few places where you're allowed to pause. You're not expected to talk, not expected to nod. Just breathe, just scrub. They say that cleanliness is next to divinity. You suspect the man who coined that phrase never bathed under the scrutiny of 4 historians, 3 doctors, and a eunuch with a foot fetish rumor attached to his name. Another attendant approaches with a long-handled brush. He bows before offering it to you. You take it. You're expected to scrub your arms and chest yourself, to symbolize that even emperors must shoulder their own sins. Your legs, however, are considered the domain of servitude. 3 men kneel to wash them while chanting softly in tandem. The rhythm is hypnotic, soothing, even until one of them sneezes. Everyone freezes. You glance down. The man's eyes go wide. He bows low and mutters a prayer. He'll likely be reassigned to lavatory duty before sundown. You make a mental note to undo that punishment, if you remember, but you probably won't. As the ceremony continues, someone adjusts the bronze mirror near the wall. It reflects your image back to you. Naked, weary, regal. You look like a statue someone forgot to dust. You think back to your youth, when the bath was a source of joy, when you and your cousins would splash around, make waves, laugh until the servants scolded you. That joy was taxed out of you by the time you turned 15. Now, the only waves are ceremonial. A servant brings out the bath stones, smooth river rocks heated over charcoal. They're supposed to stimulate blood flow and revive imperial vigor. Mostly, they just make your feet twitch. You rest your arms on the edge of the tub. Silence. Stillness. It should be peaceful, but all you hear are whispers tucked into corners of the room, conversations waiting to happen once you leave. That eunuch in the corner is watching the doctor too closely. That servant girl glanced at your ring twice. That incense watcher hasn't moved in 20 minutes. Is he asleep? Dead. Transcended. You blink. He blinks back. Still human. Someone offers you a hot towel for your face. It smells of ginger. You let it rest there for a moment, covering your eyes, blotting out the cranes and the walls and the ceiling that listens. For 10 breaths, you pretend you're a man in a village, alone in a warm bath, listening to frogs croak outside a wooden window. But you're not. You're the son of heaven, and the frogs here have been replaced by whispering advisors and mood-sensitive physicians. You remove the towel. The head physician steps forward. He examines your skin like a scholar reviewing a poorly written scroll. He mutters something about blood stagnation and prescribes a deer antler tonic. You nod, because disagreement is exhausting. The bath begins to drain, slowly, with a gurgle that sounds almost regretful. Servants approach with silk robes, dry slippers, and a towel the size of a tent. You stand, arms out. They dry you methodically, reverently. You've never understood why being dried by 5 people feels lonelier than drying yourself. They dress you in layers of ceremonial sleepwear, because even rest requires performance. The robe is white, trimmed in gold thread. The sash is embroidered with clouds, mountains, and a tiny phoenix you've never noticed until now. You wonder if that was always there, or if someone slipped it in recently. An omen, a compliment, a warning. They help you step onto a platform where heated stones warm your souls. Someone murmurs that your pulse is strong. Someone else mumbles that your chi is still sluggish. You nod to both. You're handed a small cup of plum juice. It's bitter. You drink it anyway. It's supposed to close the body's gates and prepare the soul for descent. Another physician once described it as a spiritual palate cleanser. That physician now teaches herbal theory in the provinces. Finally, you are declared clean, not just physically, symbolically, politically, existentially. You walk back to your private chamber, accompanied by 7 people you're not allowed to acknowledge. The floor is dry. Your feet are clean. You're wearing 3 layers of divinely embroidered fabric. You should feel refreshed. You feel reset, like a scroll that's been wiped clean of ink but still smells faintly of old words. The bath is done. Your body is ready. But your mind still lingers in the warmth that never was. You found yourself in the evening coughing again, dry, shallow, almost polite at first, but then it turns into something deeper, rattling, low, a cough that curls behind your ribs like an echo trapped in bone. You bury it in your sleeve, the one embroidered with cranes mid-flight, as if grace could somehow mask decay. You are the son of heaven, divine in name, radiant in title, but your lungs, entirely human, and at this hour, entirely unreliable. The screen separates you from the others. It always does. On one side, court physicians, attendants, herbalists, and a eunuch who records the exact rhythm of your breath. On the other, you, bundled in too many layers, surrounded by silence, swallowing exhaustion like bitter tea. It's not new. You've been sick for as long as you can remember. Your childhood was punctuated by herbs, massages, and concerned glances from pale-faced tutors. There were long afternoons of restful study, which meant memorizing Confucian classics while sweating through silk sheets and pretending the world outside didn't smell like mint poultices and boiled bark. The imperial physicians have many explanations, none of them helpful. Cold key imbalance, says one, without looking up from your wrist. Wind in the liver, says another. Unruly fire trapped in the spleen, says a third, dramatically fanning himself as if to help your internal organs cool off. They all agree on one thing, though: more tonics. Tonight's prescription is tiger bone powder, deer antler wine, and a suspicious black paste that smells like burnt shoes and betrayal. You've never asked what's in it. You suspect even the pharmacist doesn't know. You drink it anyway, not because you believe in it, but because not drinking it would trigger a week-long discourse on balance, respect, and the spiritual consequences of defiance. Historians still argue whether the constant ill health of Han emperors was exaggerated by court record keepers trying to portray their rulers as noble sufferers, or whether the imperial lifestyle itself slowly eroded them from the inside. You've read both arguments. You believe both being sick, in your case, is not a matter of weakness, it's a matter of paperwork. There are entire departments devoted to your health, ministers of healing, chambers of breath, herbal divination offices. A man whose sole responsibility is to assess the temperature of your bathwater relative to your latest diagnosis. He once wept when he overheated your foot soak. You gave him a promotion out of pity. He still bows too deeply when he sees you. Your diet has also suffered under the weight of your constitution. Once, you enjoyed crab dumplings. Then someone said shellfish could disturb the kidney meridians. Now you eat jujube paste and fish porridge 6 days out of 7. On the 7th, you rebel with a slice of candied ginger and brace for the consequences. You're not dying. At least, not in the dramatic, bleeding from the mouth way that emperors do in plays. You're just unwell, perpetually, impressively, a fragile divinity cloaked in the illusion of endurance. And yet, this is useful, because when you're ill, people lower their voices. They become cautious. They start wondering about succession. They start panicking. Just a little. You've learned to use this. A single cough can clear a room. A well-timed wheeze can delay a meeting, reroute a policy, cancel a visit from an ambitious in-law. Your illness is not a curse, it's leverage. Still, you wish you could go a single day without a prescription, or a poultice, or a physician staring into your tongue like it contains secrets from the northern provinces. Earlier today, one of the newer doctors, a young man with 2 clean hands, tried pulse diagnosis. He pressed his fingers to your wrist, closed his eyes, and muttered poetic nonsense about floating rhythms. Then he asked if you'd been grieving. You said, yes. For decades. He blinked, apologized, requested to be transferred. You didn't stop him. You cough again. The screen muffles the sound. But not enough. A servant appears with a bowl of pear juice and honey. You wave it away. You're tired of pears, and honey, and bowls. You wish someone would just hand you silence. But silence isn't allowed. Silence gets filled with concern, with rituals, with updates about your humors, your key flow, your urine color, your heartbeat. Every organ of your body has a department now. You're less a man and more a cooperative of struggling biological economies. There is, somewhere in the palace, a book titled The Collected Health Observations of His Radiant Majesty. It's 8 volumes long. The first entry is from when you were 4. It records that you coughed after drinking goat's milk and frowned at a goose. Both were interpreted as omens. The last entry was from this morning. It states you paused after exhalation. No further comment. You once tried reading the book. You made it halfway through volume 2 before you had to stop. Not from illness, though your eye twitched, but from embarrassment. There were entire pages about your digestion. You're not just an emperor. You're a medical mystery in expensive pajamas. Tonight, you take the medicine anyway. You grimace. You swallow. You breathe deeply. Pretending the bitter burn down your throat means healing. The physician bows. He mutters a blessing. You almost believe it. You lie back, stare at the ceiling. Painted cranes fly in perfect formation. You count them. Again, one for each year you've ruled, and one more that always lingers in the corner of your vision, never quite in focus. They say you are divine, that your sickness is simply your body struggling to contain so much celestial energy. You wonder, if that's true, why divinity tastes like deer antler wine and feels like sandpaper behind the lungs. There's a fringe anecdote, half rumor, half myth, about an emperor in the western regions who cured himself by pretending to be a commoner for a year. He ate street food, he bathed in rivers, he chopped his own wood, and, allegedly, he returned to his throne stronger than ever. Of course, no one saw him during that year, and no one verified his identity afterward. Historians dismiss the story as allegory. You call it wishful thinking, because the truth is, illness is not just in your lungs. It's in the air of the palace, in the weight of jade seals, in the perfumed expectation of immortality. It festers in every corner of a system that expects gods and rewards ghosts. You close your eyes, breathe, cough again. The servant returns, this time with a needle case, acupuncture. Of course, you lie still as the needles go in. tiny pricks along your back, your hands, your ankles, each one carefully placed according to ancient maps of imagined rivers and elemental flows. You wonder what it would be like to draw your own map, not of the empire, but of your body, not as a list of symptoms, but as terrain, mountains where you've held tension, valleys where memories settle, rivers that run dry in winter. You imagine placing a flag in your chest and declaring it sovereign. No more herbs, no more formulas, just one breath that doesn't hurt, just one night that doesn't end in this room. Behind this screen, with eyes watching you fade, you're the son of heaven, but you've never felt more like a man wearing borrowed lungs. The needles come out. The physician bows again. You nod. Not from gratitude, just exhaustion. The screen remains. The embroidered cranes keep flying. And you lie still, softly, unseen, breathing like a secret that doesn't want to be kept. You're still coughing, but the physicians are gone now, and the incense has long since burned down to a thin twist of ash on the jade tray. Outside, the corridors are silent, save for the soft patter of slippered footsteps and the muffled rustle of paper fans. The palace exhales. But you, son of heaven, cannot, because tonight, your duties are not yet done. There is one more ritual, not one written on scrolls or carved into oracle bones. This one lives in the walls, in the old memory of emperors long gone. You rise slowly, joints stiff, lungs tight. The servant helps you into your ceremonial cloak, dark crimson, with a black sun stitched across the back. It's meant to signify cosmic balance. These days, it feels like a warning label. You leave your personal chamber and make your way to the Hall of Ancestral Echoes, a smaller, colder annex of the Imperial Temple. Few know what happens here. Fewer still are invited. Tonight, it's just you, two silent eunuchs holding lanterns, and the shadows of your predecessors. As you step inside, the smell hits you first. Aged pine beams, dusted sandalwood, faint mildew, and that inexplicable scent of time. The hall is long and narrow, lined with spirit tablets, wooden plaques painted black and red, each bearing the name of an emperor or empress past. They don't blink, they don't breathe, but their presence fills the air with a pressure heavier than silence. You're not here to sleep, you're here to apologize, to perform the midnight realignment rite, a tradition rarely recorded, barely understood, and, according to some ministers, entirely unnecessary. But necessity in the palace is often indistinguishable from superstition. You kneel on the ritual mat, stiff-legged, hands resting on your thighs. In front of you, a bronze brazier, a small bowl of wine, and a silk scroll inked with a confessional mantra. You're supposed to recite it once for heaven, once for earth, and once for the ancestors. You recite it 5 times, just in case someone didn't hear. The words catch in your throat. You cough once, an unceremonious interruption to a sacred plea, and then start again. Above you, the rafters creak. Or was that something else? It doesn't matter. This rite is performed alone, but never truly in solitude. Even if the ancestors do not listen, the eunuchs do. Even if the gods ignore you, the record keepers will not. There are always eyes, always ears. The wine is bitter, thick with herbs meant to open the mind. It tastes like moss and memory. You drink anyway. You whisper a name. Not yours. Your father's. The one who died surrounded by silver bells that didn't ring. He once performed this same ritual. Didn't he? When he feared heaven's mandate was weakening, when the stars no longer aligned in favorable formations. You remember being a boy, watching him return from this very hall, face pale and unreadable. You understand that look now. That peculiar mix of futility and obligation. One historian wrote, "The Han Emperor was both ruler and prisoner, entrusted with divine mandate, yet shackled by ritual." You would disagree. It's not a prison. It's a stage, and by this point in the script, you no longer remember if you're playing the role or becoming it. You rise slowly, knees aching. The confessional scroll is now folded and placed inside a lacquered box, sealed with a ribbon of yellow silk. Tomorrow, it will be burned. Tonight, it sits beside the tablets like an offering of regret. You turn toward the altar behind you, an elaborate wooden table inlaid with jade discs and ivory carvings. A single candle burns in the center. It casts long shadows that stretch across the ancestral tablets, making the names look like they're floating. You reach into the box beside the altar and pull out a thin stick of incense. This one is different. It's not perfumed. It smells like cedar, sharp and raw, You light it, bow 3 times, and place it upright into the ash dish. As it begins to burn, the smoke coils like a question you're not brave enough to ask. You speak, not loudly, but with conviction. I offer this night in repentance, a pause. For failing to know what I do not see, another pause. For ruling an empire I no longer understand. The silence that follows is not oppressive, it's expectant. Historians still argue whether Han emperors truly believed in the power of these rituals, or merely performed them to uphold divine legitimacy. But as the candle flickers and the incense burns low, you know this much. It doesn't matter whether the gods are real, only that the people think they are, and that you behave as if they are watching. You step back from the altar. The 2 eunuchs behind you remain still, but their shadows shift. One lowers his head slightly, a subtle signal that the rite is complete. But you linger, because something still tugs at your chest. Not duty, not faith, not even fear, just grief. Grief for what you've become in the name of endurance, for how the rituals have devoured your humanity, for how the words you speak at night carry more weight than any proclamation in court, yet mean less and less each time you repeat them. You walk slowly back toward the entrance. The floor beneath you is polished stone, cold through the soles of your slippers. You pass the tablets one last time. Your gaze lands on one in particular, Emperor Jing. He reigned for 17 years, known for cutting back the harshness of laws, for allowing debate, for trying, briefly, to make the empire a little softer. He died in his 40s, poisoned, sick. Historians still debate. You nod to his tablet, not in reverence, but in recognition. Outside, the moon hangs low and waxy in the sky, framed by the curved eaves of the palace roof. You breathe in the night air. It smells like old stone and wind-blown silk. It doesn't help your lungs, but it helps your mind. The eunuchs follow you in silence as you return to your private quarters. No one speaks. They never do after this ritual. It's as if words would disturb something sacred, or awaken something buried. You pass a tapestry on the wall depicting the heavenly mandate descending from a dragon's mouth. It's stitched in gold and indigo, barely visible in the darkness. You pause before it. The dragon's eyes seem different tonight, less angry, more tired. You reach your door. It opens with a whisper. The lanterns inside are dim, casting soft orange halos across the room. And you finally feel it. The weight, not of responsibility, but of being the last one awake in a palace of ghosts. You step inside and let the doors close behind you. There will be no music tonight, no attendance, no tea, only silence. And the fading memory of incense. Tomorrow, the empire will rise again. The scrolls will pile, the generals will bow, the concubines will smile. But tonight, just for this moment, the mask is off, and you are not the emperor. You are only a man who asked heaven to listen, and isn't sure it did. You don't drift off to sleep so much as delay it. Long after the last servant bows out and the silk sheets settle over your body like ceremonial armor, your eyes remain open, half closed, perhaps, but not surrendered. Because tonight, like so many others, your thoughts circle the one thing no emperor can avoid: death. Not the poetic kind, mind you, not the kind that artists paint in gold and vermilion, with phoenixes rising and ancestors waiting with open arms. No, the kind of death you think about is logistical, architectural, political, a death with floor plans and contingency scrolls, a death that requires budgeting. Most emperors don't get to die the way they want. That's the joke the court poets never write. For all the grandeur, the rituals, the incense-thick eulogies, they rarely die in peace, and almost never on schedule. There's always something: a cousin with ambition, a physician with shaky hand, an empress who learned to smile before she learned to lie. You know this. You've studied the ledgers. You've corrected the records. So you've decided, in the dark corners of your mind, to take death seriously, to rehearse it quietly while the palace dreams. You've already begun laying the foundations of your mausoleum, an effort carried out under 3 different project names to keep the nosy ministers guessing. It's nothing extravagant, no massive underground city or bronze-armored death guards, just a chamber, aligned with the stars, sealed with jade tiles, and lit by lanterns that will never burn. According to one of your astrologers, the orientation of your tomb is fortunate. According to another, it's a little too fortunate, which either means you'll find eternal peace or be haunted forever. Historians still argue whether Han emperors took feng shui seriously or simply feared bad press in the afterlife. Your architects are terrified of you, which is useful. They never submit the same draft twice. One even left a coded message in the brick pattern, claiming it ensures immortality. You pretended not to notice. You respect the effort, but beyond the building plans and like the ceremonial jade, the real preparation lies in succession. And that's the part that keeps your pulse up, even when your limbs are still, because you can't just die. You have to name the one who gets to live louder in your absence. And everyone in this palace knows that whoever inherits the throne doesn't just inherit your power, they inherit your enemies, your debt, your mistakes, and your legacy, which is, arguably, the most dangerous thing of all. You've drafted 6 wills in the last 2 months. Each has a different heir listed. None of them know. One is too eager, another too meek. The third is a scholar with a back injury and a tendency to apologize for breathing. The court would love him, which, ironically, makes him your most dangerous option. Your empress believes she already knows who it will be. She makes her guesses known in subtle ways. Gifted robes in the wrong size. Evening meals arranged so that her nephew sits just a little closer to your right side than protocol allows. You haven't confronted her. There's no need. In the imperial palace, confrontation is just the crude version of paperwork. The eunuchs, of course, have their preferences too. You've overheard enough clipped conversations and tea-leaf-coated whispers to suspect they've been grooming one of your lesser-known sons. He's clever, obedient, and, most importantly, easier to control. You admire their strategy. It's just a shame they think you haven't noticed. Officially, the Empire thinks you are immortal. Not literally, but functionally. No one talks about the day you won't be around to lead the morning sacrifices or review the governor reports from Gansu. The ministers still bow with the kind of stiffness that suggests eternity. The astrologers say nothing ominous, and yet the night air knows better. There's a particular chill tonight that settles not on the skin, but in the bones. A premonition, maybe, or just the creeping knowledge that even the mightiest dynasties need an exit plan. The last emperor who failed to arrange his own death properly ended up with 3 funerals. One for the people, one for the ancestors, and one to cover up the fact that he may have died in the arms of a concubine no one liked to mention. You'd rather avoid that kind of complication. Your own funeral plans are fluid. You've approved 3 drafts of the procession route. One includes a stop at the Academy of Scholars, which you only added out of guilt. The second skips it entirely, but includes a bridge crossing meant to symbolize moving into the heavens. You find that one charming, if a bit heavy-handed. The third plan, your favorite, requires the use of 144 silent drummers. The symbolism is complicated, and no one's quite explained it to you. But the silence, at least, feels honest. According to the records of the Grand Historian, the death of Emperor Jing was accompanied by a single falling star. According to your astronomer, that's a metaphor. According to the palace rumor mill, it was just an ill-timed torch accident. But you've always liked the idea. A celestial body bowing out without apology, without ritual, just motion and light, fading out across the sky. You won't get that. You'll get bells, lanterns, scribes, morning banners tall enough to shade the palace courtyard, and yet none of it will say the thing that matters. That you were tired, that you were ready, that all you wanted in the end was to lie down without being watched. There's a fringe belief, circulated among the temple scribes, that the way a ruler thinks about death shapes their afterlife. If you fear it, you are chaste. If you plan for it, you are tricked. But if you welcome it, greet it like an honored guest, it will pass through you like wind through silk. That idea, at least, gives you some comfort. You don't fear death anymore. You just resent the paperwork. Outside your window, the lanterns lining the courtyard flicker in perfect rhythm. The guards have rotated posts again. You can tell by the sound of footsteps. One of them drags his heels slightly. You'll remember that, not because it's dangerous, but because you can't help tracking everything. You've reached that strange twilight of life where everything matters and nothing does. You could rewrite a policy on rice grain measurements and change a province's fate, or you could simply nod once during a morning ritual and shift the entire court's mood. But beneath it all, there's a weightless sensation, a quiet knowing. It's almost over, not in a dramatic way, just in the way winter replaces autumn, just in the way breath becomes still. And still, tomorrow, you'll rise again, review scrolls, nod at ministers, Eat something you didn't ask for but must approve anyway. You'll smile when required. You'll scowl when strategic. You'll endure. But tonight belongs to the part of you no one sees. The man behind the mask. The strategist behind the seal. The boy who once wanted to be a poet but was told emperors don't dream. You rise one last time to adjust the lantern. Not because it's crooked, but because control's the last dignity. You return to bed. Let your head settle into the curve of the pillow. Not perfectly, just enough. Tomorrow will come. Or it won't. Either way, you've planned for it. And that's as close to peace as you're allowed. The bed is golden. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally. A frame of engraved wood lacquered in imperial gold. Raised on a tiered platform draped with phoenix-stitched brocade. The canopy above you is silk, dyed the soft hue of apricot blossoms at dusk, and embroidered so finely that if you stare long enough, the dragons seem to breathe. The scent of sandalwood lingers in the air, not from a fresh incense stick, but from the years it's soaked into the chamber walls. Music plays softly from beyond a lacquered screen, gookin strings tuned to lull the senses, performed by a trio of palace musicians who've been trained not to smile, not to pause, and, under no circumstance, to outshine the silence. This is the ritual of sleep, and like everything else in your life, it's scripted. Your robe is removed by 3 servants with perfect choreography. Your hair is undone by hands that do not shake. A eunuch reads a brief list of palace updates in a whisper, as if the news of trade negotiations or rainfall totals might somehow rock you to sleep. You nod at the appropriate parts, feigning interest in a southern magistrate's horse tax. Then they leave, all of them, quietly, respectfully, completely, and still. You do not sleep. Because emperors rarely sleep. They simulate it, they approximate it, but true rest, the kind that seeps into your bones and asks nothing of you. That luxury died with anonymity. The moment you became the son of heaven, your body became a fortress under siege by ritual. You lie in bed, eyes half closed, one hand resting on your stomach, not out of comfort, but to feel if your breath is too shallow. It's not paranoia, it's practice. Centuries of rulers have died in beds like this, surrounded by soft pillows and sharpened intentions. One emperor of the Han Dynasty once insisted on sleeping upright in a chair, convinced it made him less vulnerable to assassination. Another had guards rotate every 15 minutes, 4 shifts per hour, all night long. You've tried versions of both. Neither worked. Your current method is more subtle. You let the canopy curtains remain half drawn. You ask for 1 candle to stay lit until your breathing evens. You keep your pillow slightly misaligned, just in case anyone tries to tamper with it during the night. You invented that trick yourself. Tonight, something feels different. Not threatening, not wrong. Just present. The silence in the room isn't empty. It's expectant. Even the music, now a soft echo behind your thoughts, seems hesitant, as if the strings themselves are waiting for a cue. You breathe. In, out, slow. You are still emperor, still awake, but your mind drifts. You think of all the nights before this, nights filled with cold remedies, uncomfortable scrolls, and vague dreams of running through forests you've never seen. You remember a night when your nose bled unexpectedly, staining the edge of your sleeve, an omen. They said. You remember another when a concubine tried to sneak in without permission. She never made it to the bed. No one ever said why. You once believed that sleep was a thing to be mastered, something you could outwit. But it turns out sleep is less like a servant and more like an ambassador, visiting only when conditions are right, when the terms are acceptable, when you've stopped negotiating with yourself. The canopy rustles slightly, no breeze, no movement, just memory. The scent of sandalwood sharpens for a moment, and with it comes a flicker of childhood, a spring night long before the crown, when your mother whispered poems into your ear and traced constellations on your back. You haven't thought of that in decades. You feel the weight of it now, heavier than any jade seal. You shift your head, ever so slightly. The silk cools beneath your cheek. You could call for more music. You could summon a servant. You could check the position of the stars. Instead, you close your eyes, not fully, just enough to pretend, enough to invite, because in this chamber of golden perfection, it's the small gestures that matter, the slight curl of your fingers beneath the blanket, the gentle press of your heels into the mattress, the decision to exhale a little slower so the body might believe There's a poem, anonymous, like all dangerous ones, that says, when the emperor sleeps, the earth exhales. When he wakes, it forgets. You wonder if the earth still remembers you. You wonder if you'll remember yourself. The truth is, you are tired, not from illness, not from age, but from the weight of seeing too much, hearing too little, and knowing the difference. Your enemies used to hide their intentions behind silk fans and metaphor. Now, they hide behind bureaucracy and compliance, which is somehow worse. At least a dagger glints. At least poison leaves a clue. But agreement kills with velvet hands. You let that thought fade, because tonight, you have no arguments to win. You have no seals to press. You have no heirs to name. Not yet. You have only a golden bed, a canopy of lies, and the sound of your own breath to anchor you to the moment. Historians still argue whether emperors like you ever truly rested, or whether the act of sleep was just another performance in a lifetime of roles. They analyze records of sleeping chambers, catalog moon cycles, track dream references in ritual diaries. What they miss is this: the emperor doesn't sleep to escape. He sleeps to remain, to remind the world that even gods must close their eyes. You feel the moment creep closer, the line where thought dissolves into dream. The music outside fades, the candle dims. You do not smile. That would be too hopeful. But you do let go, just a little. Your fingers relax, your jaw soften. Your mind releases its grip on the map of dangers you've memorized. And in that release, something remarkable happens. You become quiet, not silenced, not vanished, just still. No one notices, no one claps. But for once, the empire doesn't need you. It breathes on its own. And you, cloaked in your silence, golden beneath a canopy no one truly understands, finally feel it. Sleep, not as surrender, but as sovereignty, the last power no one can steal. Good night, Son of Heaven.